Hello and welcome to today's video, where we will explore the fascinating history of Malaysia, a country that spans two regions of Southeast Asia, the Malay Peninsula and the northern part of Borneo. Malaysia is a multicultural and multilingual nation, with influences from China, India, the Middle East, and Europe. How did this diverse and dynamic country come to be? Let's find out. Malaysia's history can be traced back to prehistoric times, when the region was inhabited by early humans. Archaeologists have found evidence of human presence in the Nia cave in Sarawak dating back to 40,000 years ago. The cave also contains remains of stone tools that show the evolution of human technology until about 1,300 years ago. In peninsular Malaysia, there are signs of Stone Age and Bronze Age civilizations that existed from 6,000 to 2,500 years ago. The first historical records of Malaysia come from Chinese sources that mention small Malay kingdoms that emerged in the 2nd or 3rd century CE. These kingdoms were influenced by Indian traders and priests who brought with them Hinduism and Buddhism, as well as concepts of government and art. The Malay people adopted and adapted these ideas to suit their own culture and environment. One of the most impressive examples of Indianized architecture is the temple complex around Kita Peak in northwestern peninsular Malaysia. However, Malaysia never developed into a large or powerful empire like some of its neighbors. This was partly because of its geography, which lacked large fertile plains that could support high population densities. It was also partly because of its location on a strategic sea lane that exposed it to frequent invasions and migrations from other regions. Malaysia became a crossroads for peoples, cultures, and trade passing through or settling in both the peninsula and Borneo. In the 15th century, one of the most influential Malay kingdoms emerged, the Malacca Sultanate. Founded by a prince who converted to Islam, Malacca became a prosperous trading port and a center of Islamic learning and culture. It also expanded its territory and influence over much of the peninsula and parts of Sumatra. Malacca attracted merchants and travelers from all over Asia and beyond, including China's famous Admiral Zheng He, who visited several times. Malacca's success also attracted the attention of European powers, who were eager to gain access to the lucrative spice trade in Southeast Asia. In 1511, Malacca was conquered by the Portuguese, who were later challenged by the Dutch and the British. The Malay rulers fled to other parts of the peninsula and established new sultanates, such as Johor, Perak, Kedah, and Aceh. They also resisted colonial domination by forming alliances with local rulers in Borneo and Sumatra. Meanwhile, in Borneo, another Islamic kingdom emerged, the Brunei Sultanate. Brunei reached its peak of power in the 16th century, when it controlled most of northern Borneo and parts of the Philippines. Brunei was also involved in trade and diplomacy with other regional powers, such as China, Siam, Thailand, Java, Indonesia, and Spain. However, Brunei's influence declined in the following centuries due to internal strife, piracy, and European encroachment. The British became the dominant colonial power in Malaysia in the 18th and 19th centuries. They established their presence through various treaties and agreements with local rulers, as well as through direct intervention and conquest. They divided Malaysia into three main regions: British Malaya, consisting of the Straits settlements of Penang, Malacca, and Singapore, and the Federated Malay States and Unfederated Malay States on the peninsula, British North Borneo, now Sabah, and British Sarawak, now Sarawak. The British introduced many changes to Malaysia's economy, society, culture, and politics. They introduced a plantation economy that relied on the export of rubber and tin. They also brought in large numbers of Indian and Chinese immigrants to work as laborers, administrators, and traders. This created a multi-ethnic society with different levels of rights and privileges for different groups. The British also faced resistance and challenges from various sources. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, several Malay states fought against British intervention and interference in their affairs. The most notable examples were the Pahang Civil War, 1891–95, the Kelantan Rebellion, 1915, and the Jamenta Civil War, 1879. In addition, some local leaders, such as Mat Salleh in Sabah and Rentap in Sarawak, led rebellions against British rule in Borneo. The most serious threat to British rule came during World War II, 1939–45, when Japan invaded and occupied Malaysia. The Japanese forces quickly defeated the British and their allies, capturing Singapore in February 1942. The Japanese occupation was brutal and oppressive, especially for the Chinese population, who were subjected to massacres, torture, and forced labor. The Japanese also tried to win over the Malays by promoting their nationalist and anti-colonial sentiments. Some Malaysians resisted the Japanese occupation by joining guerrilla movements, such as the Malayan People's Anti-Japanese Army, MPAJA, which was mainly composed of communists. Others joined the Force 136, a British-sponsored resistance group that operated behind enemy lines. Some also collaborated with the Japanese for various reasons, such as survival, opportunism, or ideology. The Japanese occupation ended in August 1945, when Japan surrendered to the Allies. The British returned to Malaysia and restored their colonial administration. However, they faced a new challenge from the rising nationalist movement that demanded independence from British rule. The most prominent nationalist leader was Tunku Abdul Rahman, who became the leader of the United Malays National Organization, UMNO, a political party that represented the interests of the Malay majority. The British tried to appease the nationalists by introducing various reforms and concessions. In 1946, they proposed the Malayan Union, which would grant equal citizenship rights to all races and weaken the power of the Malay sultans. However, this plan was met with strong opposition from UMNO and other Malay groups, who feared losing their special position and identity in their own land. The British then revised their plan and replaced the Malayan Union with the Federation of Malaya in 1948, which restored some of the privileges and powers of the Malays and their sultans. In 1948, another challenge emerged, the Malayan Emergency. This was a communist-led insurgency that aimed to overthrow British rule and establish a socialist republic in Malaya. The communists were mainly Chinese and had fought against the Japanese during the war. They used guerrilla tactics to attack British targets and sabotage economic activities. The British responded with a comprehensive counter-insurgency campaign that involved military operations, political reforms, economic development, and psychological warfare. The Malayan Emergency lasted until 1960, when the British declared it over after defeating most of the communist forces. During this period, the British also granted more autonomy and self-government to Malaya. They also encouraged cooperation among different ethnic groups to foster a sense of national unity and identity. In 1955, Malaya held its first general election, which was won by UMNO and its allies in the Alliance Party. The Alliance Party then negotiated with the British for Malaya's independence. On the 31st of August 1957, Malaya became an independent federation within the Commonwealth of Nations, with Tunku Abdul Rahman as its first prime minister. Malaya's independence was followed by a series of events that led to the formation of Malaysia. In 1961, Tunku Abdul Rahman proposed the idea of a larger federation that would include Singapore, Sabah, Sarawak, and Brunei. He argued that this would create a stronger and more stable nation that could resist external threats and promote economic and social development. He also hoped that this would foster racial harmony among the diverse peoples of the region. However, the proposal faced opposition from various sources. The Philippines claimed Sabah as part of its territory. Indonesia opposed the formation of Malaysia as a challenge to its own influence and aspirations in Southeast Asia. Some local leaders and groups in Sabah and Sarawak were concerned about losing their autonomy and identity. Some communists and radicals in Malaya and Singapore were against joining a pro-Western federation. And some Malay nationalists feared being outnumbered by the Chinese population in Singapore. Despite these challenges, Tunku Abdul Rahman managed to persuade most of the parties involved to agree to his plan. He also obtained the consent of the Malay sultans and the British government. A referendum was held in Sabah and Sarawak to gauge public opinion. A commission was appointed to draft a constitution for the new federation. And a date was set for the formation of Malaysia, the 16th of September 1963. On that day, Malaysia was officially proclaimed as a new nation, consisting of Malaya, Singapore, Sabah, and Sarawak. Brunei decided not to join at the last minute due to political and economic reasons. The Philippines and Indonesia did not recognize Malaysia and launched diplomatic and military campaigns to undermine it. This resulted in a period of confrontation and conflict that lasted until 1966. Malaysia's early years were also marked by internal problems and tensions. In 1965, Singapore left the federation due to political and economic disagreements with the federal government. In 1969, racial riots erupted in Kuala Lumpur after a general election that saw a decline in support for the ruling Alliance Party. This led to a state of emergency and a suspension of parliamentary democracy for 2 years. Malaysia also faced security threats from communist insurgents who continued their struggle against the government. The Second Malayan Emergency lasted from 1968 to 1989, when a peace agreement was signed between the Malaysian government and the Malayan Communist Party. Despite these difficulties, Malaysia also achieved significant progress and development in various fields. It adopted a national ideology called Rukun Negara, national principles, to promote unity and harmony among its people. It implemented a new economic policy, NEP, to reduce poverty and inequality among different ethnic groups. It joined regional and international organizations such as ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and the United Nations. It diversified its economy from agriculture to manufacturing, services, and tourism. It improved its infrastructure, education, healthcare, and social welfare systems. Today, Malaysia is one of the most prosperous and dynamic countries in Southeast Asia. It has a population of about 32 million people who belong to various races, religions, cultures, and languages. It has a constitutional monarchy system with a federal parliamentary democracy. It has a vibrant civil society with various political parties, media outlets, non-governmental organizations, and social movements. Malaysia's history is rich and complex, full of challenges and achievements, conflicts and cooperation, diversity and unity. It is a history that reflects the spirit of its people, resilient, adaptable, creative, and proud. Thank you for watching this video on the history of Malaysia. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, subscribe, and comment below. See you next time.